Hi, welcome again to Verbum Day Word Crumbs. Today is the second week. No, we're in the second week of Ordinary Time, and today's Tuesday. I would like to talk today about rest. Okay, just a very simple theme on rest, because the readings today talk about the Sabbath, and Jesus was questioned about how he lived the Sabbath because the disciples were picking corn, etc. And strictly speaking, according to the Pharisees, they were not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath. Now we know already that Jesus has questioned this way of thinking, that he was even saying, don't they untie their ox in order to feed them on the Sabbath? So they do things. And isn't it better if we do something because of love and because there is a need? So the Sabbath is not about not doing anything, but the Sabbath is about offering our lives for God and for charity or for love. Now, we all know that rest is a very important part of our lives, especially in modern days or nowadays, when we know that a balanced lifestyle is very healthy. We work, but we rest. We eat well, we do exercise. So that's a very balanced way of living, and rest is very important, even though sometimes it's difficult to learn how to rest. But rest could be thought about in three ways. It could be physical rest, it could be also emotional rest, and it could be spiritual rest. Now, I think we already know that physical rest is very important, and we try to do it as much as possible. We try to sleep early, perhaps, or at least to sleep a fixed number of hours in order that we can function well during the day. But at the same time, there's a kind of emotional rest when we are very stressed out, when we are doing too many things, carrying a lot of burdens from people, especially for those who are in the health sector. Can you imagine those who are working on the front lines during this pandemic? They must go through a lot of emotional stress. So they too need to find a kind of rest emotionally. And when we rest emotionally, we find that we can also function better. Sometimes it's good to just detach from our situations, detach a little bit for a certain time, from our relationships even, and to rest our feelings, our emotions, and realize that our feelings don't condition everything. So physical and emotional rest are also very important. But of course, today I'd like to talk about spiritual rest, the rest that is asked of us as Christians or people who follow the Bible, because we know that the Sabbath is a day of rest, where traditionally we believe that God himself rested on the seventh day of creation, if you remember. So as followers or believers of this Judeo-Christian God, we too need to learn how to rest in a spiritual way. Now you might ask, what does that mean? What does it mean to rest spiritually? And this is where the Gospel of today, which is Mark chapter 2, 23 to 28, explains a little bit of it. Once again, Mark 2, 23 to 28, if you'd like to take some time to read it. It's about the time when Jesus was questioned by the Pharisees of why he was picking corn on the Sabbath with his disciples. And he gave the reason. Well, he interpreted scriptures very intelligently, and he said that, King David did it as well. So if you want to be strict with scriptures, I'm not doing anything wrong. But he also corrects their way of thinking about the Sabbath, about what it means to rest spiritually. And he says two things there, is that the Sabbath is meant for people and not people for the Sabbath. We don't uphold religious rules for their own sake, but it's more for the rest that human beings need. God doesn't need to rest in that sense. It's we who need to rest, and that's why the Sabbath was given. But the second part was that he said, it's not just that the Sabbath is in function of human beings, in function of love, if you like, or charity. He's saying it's also to recognize that God is the owner of our lives, to recognize that we are not the owners of our own lives. In the spiritual sense, of course, we have to take personal responsibility for ourselves, physically and emotionally as well. But there's a certain part which is spiritual, to recognize that, hey, we do whatever we can, but there's another owner, and that's the Son of Man, that's Christ, and that we have to offer our lives as they are back to Him. Now, I'd just like to bring some words of a church father whose name is St. Ignatius of Antioch. Some wise words that he said in order to help us to understand this twofold understanding of the Sabbath. And in a very simple title, he says, have faith in Christ and have faith in charity. Have faith in Christ and have faith in charity. So we need faith in both. So meaning, what makes us rest spiritually is when we believe in love, when we believe in charity, and when we believe in Christ, when we believe in God. That God is love. We know that. But sometimes we tend to forget that to make that act of faith in believing in Christ, the God whom Christ has revealed to us, and in believing that love really makes a difference. Why is it that we need to believe both in love and in Christ? It's because, simply put, it's because our motivation to love has to be God. What makes us tired spiritually, what makes us tired to love, many times is because we expect something in return from others. What Christ is trying to teach us is, don't expect it from others whom you try to love. Don't even expect it from yourself. And sometimes we are the ones trying to, make ourselves feel better in order to keep loving. Don't do that, Christ said. Expect the reward from God. Try to attune your heart to expect a reward from God. Try to learn to focus your heart on God. Sometimes we get tired of people, we get tired of serving others because our hearts are still somehow attuned towards expecting that reward from people. Don't you think so? What they think about us, what are their opinions, we tend to live before people, so to speak. Jesus is trying to teach us, learn to live before God, before God's judgment even of our lives, before God's justification even of who we are, and not others. Because if we try living pleasing others in that sense, or expecting good opinions or satisfaction that comes from people, we will never be satisfied, because it was not meant to be. We were created to expect that reward from God, His opinion, His love, and His satisfaction. So in summary, the Sabbath teaching of Jesus is teaching us that there's a third kind of rest. There's a physical, there's the emotional, but there's a spiritual rest, which means every Sunday, why do we celebrate the day of the Lord? Attune your heart back to your real owner, so that during the week or every day, learn to pray, so that every day of the week, your heart will be attuned to the one who really owns, whose opinion really matters, and that is God. And if we live right before Him, and we live according to what He thinks of us, what He says of us, what He wants of us, then we will find rest in the midst of it all. So have faith in charity, but have faith in Christ. Have faith in the Sabbath rest, and learn to rest in God during the day. Rest is not about doing nothing. Sometimes doing things can even help us to rest, especially when we do it out of love and we do it for God and not just for men.